So here's a story about an apartment I rented for a weekend with a few pals. The apartment had 4 floors, and I had the attic room on the top floor. It was simple, with 2 beds and not much else. It didn't have windows. It was dark and a bit stuffy. We only planned to stay there for the weekend, so I didn't think the lack of comfort would bother me. But boy, was I wrong. Trying to sleep in that attic was impossible. It just felt off, you know? The whole night, I was tossing about, glancing at the ceiling, unable to sleep a wink. Around 4 a.m., I heard this creepy sound of footsteps coming up the stairs. The footsteps were followed by a high-pitched sound of the only exit door to my room creaking open. I lay there, watching the door open bit by bit, believing my buddy was pulling a prank. But when I called out, no one responded. Then, suddenly, the door flung open with a loud bang. And there, in the gloomy room, a silhouette of a person appeared, standing against the backdrop of the Paris streets seen through the window. Seeing the unidentified figure moving towards me, I chose to act rather than wait. I grabbed a hefty lamp and got ready for action. Managing to keep my distance, I moved in circles around the figure, swinging the lamp for protection. Seizing the right moment, I hurled the lamp at the shadowy figure and ran down the stairs in a frenzy. Waking my friend in a hurry, I told him about the bizarre happening in the attic. Noticing the wide-open front door of the apartment, we hurriedly left without even grabbing our phones. Soon, our other friends showed up, and although they found nothing in the apartment, they found a broken lamp. I broke the lamp, but we didn't mess up the place. So that was one crazy and unforgettable weekend. Not too long ago, I decided to take a trip, and for my accommodation, I chose an Airbnb townhouse in a small town. This wasn't a random choice, though. This town was close to some hiking trails I had dreamed of exploring. This was my first time visiting this town. Honestly, I had no clue about my surroundings. All I knew was that it was a small, cozy town and just the right location for me. After a tiresome 9-hour journey, I finally arrived at my temporary haven, and it was pretty late. The townhouse was located on a street filled with similar-looking houses. After finding the right one, I parked my car and unloaded my stuff. The house looked okay from the outside. A bit old, but nothing I wasn't prepared for. Once I was settled, I quickly texted the owner to let them know I had arrived. As I stood there waiting for a reply, I heard a door opening nearby. To my surprise, a friendly-looking man approached me, addressing himself as the host. He swiftly showed me into the Airbnb and was kind enough to note that he stayed right next door, available for any assistance I might need. Though unexpected, I shrugged it off, set up my stuff in the bedroom, quickly looked around, and soon drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I was up early, had a quick breakfast, and set out to the trails, walking and experiencing the beauty of nature for a good 4 hours. I returned to the townhouse around 7 p.m., and something seemed odd. I noticed a few things in my room slightly misplaced. Nothing seemed to be missing, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that someone might have been in my room. I spent a good half an hour looking around, trying to convince myself that perhaps I was just a bit nervous being in an unfamiliar place. After shrugging off these thoughts, I made myself some dinner and lounged on the couch, watching YouTube videos on my phone. Around 11 p.m., I decided to call it a day and headed off to bed. The townhouse was a single story, so my bedroom was just at the end of the main hallway, opposite the front door. This was different from what I was used to, which was sleeping upstairs, so it took me a while to get comfortable. As I tried to sleep, I woke up every few minutes. During one such wakeful moment, I heard a soft creak from across the house, like someone was stealthily trying to open a door. A bit concerned, I decided to check and cracked open my bedroom door slightly. Peeping down the hallway, I could see the dim glow of the porch light coming through the partially opened front door. My heart raced as I quickly shut my bedroom door, locked it, and called the police. During the call, I heard a faint noise outside my bedroom door. Looking down, I could see the shadow of someone standing there. I immediately held my breath and waited for the person to leave before continuing my distress call. Once the police arrived, whoever was inside had already left. The officers found shoe prints inside the house, confirming someone had indeed been inside. Even though I suspected the Airbnb host, no solid evidence pointed toward him. There were also no telltale signs to confirm if they had been in the house while I was away during the day, but the fact that they only seemed to come around when I was inside made me believe that their intent was somehow related to me. This incident has since left me with a sense of unease, also wondering about the possible outcomes and if the intruder is still out there somewhere. A few summers back, I spent a night at an Airbnb, a treat from a family friend who happened to own the property. It was the eve of my best friend's wedding. But you know what? It turned out to be a crazy, scary experience. Imagine the worst nightmare you could have. That's what I dreamt. In my nightmare, terrifying as it was, we, the bride-to-be and her bridesmaids, were trapped in that very Airbnb house. And there was this eerie man, the stranger he was to us, who intimidated us and set the house on fire with us still inside. When I woke up, boy was I scared. I felt this bad vibe in the house, as if something wasn't quite right. I spent the rest of the night, eyes wide open, trying to shake off that lingering dread. Now here's the spooky part. When daylight broke, another bridesmaid confessed she'd also had a nightmare. In her frightful dream, we were all killed in the same house. And just like me, she felt this hair-raising energy in the house that kept her awake for the rest of the night. I've always been skeptical about things, but I will tell you what, after that unforgettable experience, I find it too daunting to stay at an Airbnb now. My home is in a tiny country where the nights are still filled with traditional bump-in-the-night noises, not just the sounds of eerie folklore tales, but also the whispers of shady characters and criminal gangs. The place I call home is never truly detached from the everyday risks of the unknown. On one particularly dark night, I found myself all on my own. In our local culture, it's not at all unusual for the whole family to live under one roof. Grandparents, parents, children, and grandchildren live together, sharing and growing our property for the dual benefits of wealth and security. It's the simplest and most effective way of living. Yet, as you can imagine, with so many people in one house, having a moment of solitude is quite a special occurrence. On this rare occasion, I decided to indulge in my usual ritual. I set up the surround system throughout the living room, switched off all the lights, and cozied up on the couch with my favorite snack. I was ready to get lost in whatever show or movie that I wanted to watch on our family's massive television. Even with the ever-present sense of danger looming over me, I recall that evening as being surprisingly serene. The gentle coastal breeze and soothing sound of rain against the roof made for a perfect backdrop. I thought I heard a noise at the front door as the night grew darker. Startled, I got up to check, but as I approached, the noise stopped. I chalked it up to being a noisy storm and the loud television volume playing tricks on me. I let out a sigh of relief and tried my best to relax. Just as I was ready to lose myself in the movie again, I heard a strange rattling from the back door. As I strained my eyes to see what was happening, I heard a loud, frantic knocking against the solid wooden door, causing my heart to skip a beat. I was rooted to my spot, petrified. What I had initially dismissed as sounds of the storm or maybe garden debris flying about was clearly something more sinister. There was certainly someone trying to get into the house, and the most troubling part was that everyone living in the house typically had a key. The person behind the door did not. My mind raced with a million thoughts and scenarios, but I was frozen in fear. After what felt like an eternity, the knocking stopped. I could hear nothing but the sound of my own racing heartbeat. Cautiously, I made my way to the back door and peered through the window. There was no one there. It wasn't until the next morning that we found out that our neighbor's house had been broken into. The intruder must have mistaken our back door for theirs in the dark, stormy night. From that day on, I never took my moments of solitude for granted again. And even though it turned out to be a false alarm, it was a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we can be in our own homes. Imagine going on a 3-day drive from Portland to Chicago, and you might want to make it a bit more special, so you decide to use Airbnb for your stay instead of getting cooped up in a hotel. So the first stop is Wyoming. Now, Wyoming isn't exactly a bustling metropolis. It's mostly small towns, and the one you've landed in is tiny. It's so teensy you could probably walk through it in no time. Just when you cross the border entering Wyoming, snow starts falling like mad, resulting in a longer drive. By the time you reach your destination, night has fallen and the town is quiet, almost like a ghost town. You were hoping to grab a quick meal from McDonald's, but sadly the town is too small for that. You finally pull up to your Airbnb, nestled in a snowy field with tall pines lining the front yard. It's a charming little house, no more than 500 square feet. After letting yourself in, you leave your bag next to the bed and relax on the couch. Suddenly, you hear a loud thump coming from the bedroom. You do a cursory check around the house and find nothing amiss, but for some reason, the closet door seems to be stuck. You shrug it off, thinking it might be a storage closet where the owner keeps their extra stuff. You sit on the couch again, planning your drive for the next day, but soon you can't ignore the heavy snowfall outside. Peering through the window, you see it's pitch black outside. The town lies invisible behind the towering pines, and the snow still falls heavily. You notice a shadow moving in the bedroom as you turn away from the window. It reminded you of a door opening or closing. You instantly go to check, only to find the room just as you left it. Your eyes land on the closet again, and the unease returns. You decide to check a second time, and the door opens easily this time. It's empty, just an ordinary walk-in closet. But before you can make sense of it, you sense someone behind you. Turning around, you find a man standing in the bathroom doorway. He's tall and weary, with scratches and cuts marking his face. He doesn't seem bothered by your presence. He fetches a duffel bag from under the bed and walks out without even a glance in your direction. You watch him disappear into the snow outside, beyond the glow of the house's lights. You alert the police, but all they do is speak to the Airbnb host. Bidding the town goodbye, you get no further information. You can only guess what his intentions were, but one thing keeps haunting you: the thought of how close you came to sharing a room with a stranger, unknowingly, if you hadn't stayed awake. So here's a story about a little trip I took. Living in a pretty flat and dull place, I decided to take a short break somewhere more exciting. Of course, mountains and forests were at the top of my list, so I picked Colorado. But the popular towns were a bit too pricey, so I dove into the less-known areas to find a perfect Airbnb. After a bit of digging, I found a place that fit my budget. I took the leap, booked it, and started my cross-country drive the next week. 10 hours later, I arrived, but the first impression wasn't quite what I expected. The town, especially at night, looked eerily quiet, almost like a ghost town. I found my Airbnb without too much trouble. It was in a cul-de-sac alongside 4 other small homes. Upon entering, I found it cozy, though it was a tiny 500 square foot house. The arrangement was charming. Having settled in, I spent a few moments in the kitchen to unwind and check in with my family. But my peace was disturbed by a car pulling up outside. I saw from the window that the headlights went out, but no one got out of the car. After feeling like a snoopy neighbor, I decided to mind my own business. I was about to retire for the night when I heard a car door and footsteps outside. Being in an unfamiliar place, the sound made me feel a bit uneasy. However, I brushed it off as the neighbor returning home and went off to bed. I woke up suddenly, feeling a sense of unease. In the dark, my eyes landed on the window, and there, looking back at me, were a pair of eyes. My heart pounded. I heard the intruder move away, but their footsteps didn't sound like they were leaving. Panicked, I rushed to get dressed, only for a shuffling noise to send chills down my spine. It was coming from right outside my door. Then I heard heavy footsteps running out of the house and a car speeding away. It felt like an eternity before I dared open the front door and found it hanging open. The intruder was gone. I reported the incident to the local police, but nothing came of it. As for the man who broke in and why, I didn't stay to find out. That's a wrap. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like these.